Awesome. Well, welcome to the Powell Perspective here. I'm Tom Powell, and joining me today is Candace Powell, who runs the family office, and we're going to get started. Candace specifically said on this issue, she wanted to jump in and start the conversation. So I have no idea what questions are coming at me. I feel like Johnny Carson holding up cue cards to my head. But for those of you too young to know what that is, you'll understand by the time we're done.
Okay, Grandpa, move aside. I'm hijacking the Powell perspective. It's the little Powell's perspective now. So, haha. Um, yes. So I am really excited about today's episode. I think it's a great time to do a little bit of an origin story on who Tom Powell is, or Papa P, as a lot of us call you. And so I thought it was a good opportunity to introduce your listeners to who you are, where you came from, your background, what I grew up with. I expect a lot of sympathy messages into the show notes today. And where some of the extra pieces come in, we've got some new stuff coming onto your podcast. We're hoping to incorporate Just Ask Dad segment, which is really just a real life piece of what we already do. Anytime somebody asks me a question, my first answer is, well, just ask my dad. I don't know. Just ask my dad. So let's dive in. Papa P, who's your favorite child? Here.
Cassie. He's the only one I bought a car for.
That's true. It is your dog. We all know it. If you ever get a glimpse at my dad's phone, his favorite child, the love of his life, is his background, both home screen and the actual screen. It's kind of crazy. I'm like, you couldn't find any other picture to put there. Well, so I want to give a little bit of history, really. We'll go back to that one, that total cop-out answer at the end. But give a little history. We are very proud Northern Nevadans, very proud of our mountain roots, our mining roots. And I want you to give a little bit of the family history on our people on the West Coast here.
Well, I'll try and be brief on it, but my grandfather, your great-grandfather, and now my granddaughter's great-great-grandfather, which just sounds really weird, was a geologist in Dublin, Ireland. The family was apparently a long history of water masters there. And in his 30s, he came over to the States to go for gold and silver, and started in Alaska, and then came to Nevada and discovered what at the time was the largest find in the state of Nevada, which was at the turn of the last century. So we're talking late 1800s, early 1900s. And that led him. He was a confirmed lifelong bachelor, but in his 50s, traveling around the world after becoming extremely insanely wealthy, he met and married my grandmother, your great grandmother, and that started the Fox clan here in northern Nevada, outside of Lake Tahoe. He actually discovered another mine not too far from Lake Tahoe, which is how we got into northern Nevada. And that was called the Arrowhead Mine, which we actually have a couple companies called Arrowhead. That's the start of it. My father, on the other side, came from, also his family came from Ireland, but he came via the military during the Korea War, and he met my mom, your grandma. They were both working at the hospital. And so he decided to stay in the area after being in Korea. And so that's how the Powell clan got to the Lake Tahoe area.
I think the thing is, like, you reference our family history and our deep roots in Northern Nevada, and it's something we're proud of because there's not a lot of local and family history, especially when you get to the West Coast, right? Like, the history's pretty short here. Let's dive into you. I want to know more about you, other than the fact that you look amazing in purple. And thanks for wearing that today. I think one of the things people assume about you, and it is pretty spot on. I mean, you do come from the Silicon Valley space. However, I think you are so the antithesis of the Patagonia puffer vest wearing Silicon Valley finance bro. And I want to expose a little bit more about who you are and where you came from and why that's so important, because you have a really interesting background. And one of the things that you really, people have to kind of get to know you, but they'll eventually find out about you, is that my sweet little auntie was surprised to see your name in the high school graduation commencement book.
Yeah, she was.
So I think we need to dive into that.
The quick story is for Silicon Valley, I was a banker in Silicon Valley in the 80s, which in of itself is a very unique story. I will counter your vest wearing Silicon Valley look. I probably was one of the early people that helped establish that, because you guys would make fun of me being in flip flops, shorts, and then a black Patagonia vest. So just as an aside, and that's living in Lake Tahoe with snow. So the reason my sister was very surprised is because, one, she was the adult in my life with barely 9 years older than me, raising me. My parents were gone pretty early in my life, and all that wealth from my grandfather was gone. And so I didn't go to school a whole heck of a lot. I had two interests that did not involve school. One was I loved skiing, and two was I loved being an entrepreneur. And at the time when I was, still an early teen, your older aunt, not the same sister, was doing some motivational talks and having those play in there. And there was a guy named Earl Nightingale and a couple others that started coming across my radar. And they talked about free enterprise and doing what you want to do. And so I didn't know at 14 or 12 that that wasn't what you're supposed to do. So started my first company. By high school, I was earning more than the teachers, which gave me no desire to go to school. And so that is kind of the start of it. Through a number of things, I ended up with a few retail stores that I was managing, moved to the Bay Area, and got recruited by Wells Fargo Bank on the dumb luck that they needed people that understood how to manage retail salespeople, and I had these retail stores. So that, there's a whole long story in that. In '92, we had a recession as a banker, and I had done really well in my career at that point. And we started our first fund, which has led us to be in the business that we've been in since that time. And to your aunt's surprise, I decided to go to college, and then went to college again, and then went to college again, and then went to college again. Have 5 degrees, which is ridiculous. But they include places like Harvard and Northwestern and Northeastern, and actually even teach at Northeastern.
Sorry you had to settle on your safety schools there. Um,
I know.
so some of this is grew up with some of these stories, and it's always crazy to me hearing them, especially having seen you through so many of these periods, right? Because not only were you a young entrepreneur, but you had a whole mess of kids, while going back to school during these times. Um, I want to kind of revisit one of the things that you said really motivated you was growing up and paying attention to the parents of some of your friends whose parents were doing really well for themselves.
Yeah, I use that as a kind of a backdrop. First of all, I get to say thank you to a lot of my mentors often in my life. And one of the greatest things I've had is I've been surrounded not only by, the Earl Nightingales and then the Jim Rohns and then the Tommy Hopkins and, read Napoleon Hill. And, you've seen my library, thousands of books that I just am a voracious learner of how these people from Seneca to whomever. But the best was always OPE, other people's experiences. and then learning how to do OPM, other people's money. But the OPE was a number. I was fortunate to grow up in a neighborhood of extremely wealthy kids, or at least what I thought was extremely wealthy kids. What I learned really quickly was that the kids didn't actually have the wealth, their parents had the wealth. And as I matured as an adult, I saw that they were going to, many of them, lead lives of much distress. And many of them have died because of drug and alcohol and other things that have happened there. People's names that are on top of buildings around the world. Right. So that's a very interesting thing. What I learned was that the parents, and almost exclusively, so my sister was a female entrepreneur. She was one of the few female entrepreneurs that I got to know, and then I got to know more and more and more female entrepreneurs. But for the most part, it was dads that were the entrepreneurs, and they were able to have these things that I idealized, which was they had a family, they had kids, they were growing businesses, they had the various things going on. They were encouraging their kids to go to college, all of that stuff. And I decided pretty early on that entrepreneurialism equaled freedom. Freedom is absolutely a strong driver for my life. And so the best way to have freedom was to be an entrepreneur. And understanding that with freedom comes an awful lot of responsibility, just like being a parent. So that was a driving force. It continues to be a driving force, and it's a gift that why with the founder's office we actually continue to drive that on, not just as a thought leader but a results leader, is really passing along not only the monetary and as you know, I mean, we don't have enough time to get into a lot of the stories, but you were raised in a house of privilege in a lot of ways, but I tried to do my very best to make sure that you were not privileged economically. You were privileged through experiences because I was not privileged economically, but the privilege of the experiences of the people I got to know and the places I got to travel to because of other people who paid that forward to me benefited, I don't know, tens of thousands of people probably throughout my lifetime of the people I've been able to touch through various ways. So that's what we're doing with the founder's office is being able to help that free enterprise. And I really do believe, free enterprise is what changes the world. It's not capitalism. People distort that conversation about capitalism. It's free enterprise. And it's that entrepreneurial model. It's that founder that leads people to do what it is or solve a problem that they need solved. And it's not the government. It's not, it is with governmental help. I'm not an anti government person, but it is a person who says, this can be fixed and I'm going to do it.
And I think you modeled that so much as we were growing up, which it's kind of funny to like put this history together. OPE was one of the sayings as kids when we were growing up because you could either learn the hard way, which was making the mistakes yourself and learning that way, which also very much a method that we use to learn in our family and as kids and as adults. And probably today I've made a mistake that I definitely didn't need to make. But OPE was such a big part of how we grew up. You wanted us to learn from each other's mistakes, your mistakes. You're always very open with us about when things were not going well or, oops, totally screwed up here. This is what I learned. And what you wanted us to do was instead of being embarrassed about our mistakes or instead of, uh, taking those experiences and not really taking them as a whole experience, either taking them as just good or just bad and defining them, you really forced us to explore and as we called it fishbone, those experiences. And then now you've built a whole business off of OPE essentially. So I don't know if you've made that connection, but I made that connection. So it is kind of like this real full circle moment.
Some of the interesting parts of my life is I when I'm in a room, sometimes I'm sure I come across as Walter Mitty. And for those that don't know Walter Mitty, it's the story of he's basically always making up the life and the stories and all the things that he's ever done. And part of my experiences come from a willingness to say yes, which, by the way, most of the time when I say yes, good things happen, but also sometimes it can be very painful. But it leads to gosh, let's talk about cannabis. Well, I don't know cannabis from personal usage, but I know it because all of a sudden we own a cannabis business type scenario. Or, let's talk about this transaction that was going on. And it's like, oh yeah, we lent to them, or I gave them their original capital when they first needed it. Or yes, I know this person or that person, or, and it always probably sounds made up. And if I look at my life in total, my life probably looks made up in many cases. I live a really most unique life, but I think any of us do. And so the big part of that is coming back. And I really love how Joe Polish does it because he's just wearing his addiction on his sleeve and then he's helping other people do that. And I think that that's just such a powerful place because in the United States, we want everybody to be perfect, right? If you get in trouble with the law, you are out of the game forever, ever. If you have a person that had sex at an early age, oh my gosh, forget that. And then they had a child. Oh, horrible, horrible, horrible type scenarios. We do all these different things. If they were addicted to drugs or an alcoholic or any of those things, most of these are learning experiences, and there are people that don't have good choices that do the best choices they can out of there, and then there's other people who have a lot of great choices and they just are dumbasses. And so I think part of that is, again, as the founder, most founders don't even know what they don't know. And so we take that whole entrepreneurial background and take it into life and say, if you want to learn how to do this, I'm sorry about this. I'm going ranting a little bit, but anything I want to know, I hire a coach in most cases. Now, I'm also out there trying to learn and get I go onto YouTube and say, oh, can I do it DIY? And then it looks like crap. So we do hire the person to do it. And then if I want to learn it, I hire the coach. And then usually I hire an accountability coach to make sure I keep trying to learn it. Right. And that's the spaces in life, as you know. And so it leads to an awful lot of things that are going on.
That is so true. Also, this is my show, man. Quit hijacking it. Uh,
Okay. All
I'm
right.
totally teasing, Dad. No, that you're so spot on. I mean, I've never met anybody else like you who, when they want to do something, they are hiring the all the experts that they can find in every single possible way that touches that activity I mean, biking, cycling, hiking, yoga, meditation, skiing. Um, it's insane. So one of our favorite movies is Meet the Robinsons. It's one of our family favorites. And I think that's it came out as, I was well out of the house at that point, but this really celebratory movie about making mistakes and learning and growing. And it's one of the things I think you do the best. And I hear from a few of our clients. I had a call with a client just a couple days ago. And they had said, they were having a real big moment, dark moment in their journey as a founder. And they had a call with you and they just were in such a dark space and really a level of, it seemed like I'm guessing some shame and embarrassment is what they kind of alluded to me. And you just came in with this, it's okay. We've all been there. You're doing great. You're swinging for the fences. And this almost, as I call them, dad talks of just this level of like, okay, I can breathe a little bit because somebody else has been there. This isn't such a lonely journey. Um, and what I find remarkable, and this is where I want to bring it full circle, is who did that for you when you were starting out? Because you really were swinging for the fences, and knowing what I know about you and your history, I'm curious who was that person for you?
That's a great question. I honestly can't tell you who that mentor was. I- it it might, to a small extent, be your grandma,
Hmm.
who passed away and was very mentally ill. So that probably doesn't help the situation. But um, and I know she passed away, but she passed away when I was pretty young. And the thing was she, for the first 5 years of my life, she basically would say, "Oh, you can do anything you want. You can be an astronaut, you can be a, president, you can do whatever." And anytime I made a boo-boo, it didn't really matter, and all the different things. And so that was probably core learning scenarios, because there's an awful lot of other people in my life that have been extremely judgmental, and then surprised when I come out the other end, right? So just like everybody else, I will say, I know we're at almost at our 20 minutes, or we're right at our 20 minutes, so we're going to have to continue the podcast at some point. But this week I am speaking, and you're going to have this out of context because you'll probably be listening to this after I speak. But I'm going to be speaking at Genius, and this talk is somewhat what's on the talk, which is I start off, with have you ever felt like you don't belong in the room? Like you just aren't good enough. You've got LinkedIn, you've got YouTube, you've got uh, Instagram. I remember the name. You have all these other things that go on. You have Genius Network, right? All these things. Dan Sullivan with Coach. And you walk in the room and you're like, I don't belong here. And the reality is, all of us belong there. All of us have the opportunity to find the problems we can solve. And then we are uniquely gifted to be able to do that. And if you choose to be a founder, companies like the Founder's Office and others can help guide that journey, because it's a painful journey, but it's a reality that is what changes the world. Founders and then the people that work with them are just today's pioneers, and they change it. And so it's an exciting journey. And I am probably one of the most fortunate people that have lived, not just today, but of all days, because I have a great family. I have amazing kids and grandkids and friends and all the opportunities that I get to take part of. And, so I count that as very, very fortunate.
Well, we're the lucky ones, Dad, and I'm just so grateful to
Ah,
you. And I mentioned that because it was this client that I was talking about. She's actually older than you, but it was a very dad moment. And I've seen you bring this. You bring it to me a lot. Obviously, you and I have dad talks all day, but you bring it to a lot of people, clients, our friends, anybody who comes to me with a question. And it made me think, who was that for you? And there's somebody else out there, I'm sure right now, who has a dad question, and they could use that talk. They could use that moment. And I'm just so grateful that you continue to do that for me and for everybody we know. We actually wanted to incorporate a little bit of the Just Ask Dad piece of this. If you need a dad moment, if you have a Just Ask Dad question, we're going to start incorporating those into your podcast, because it's one of the favorite things that we do around our office, and we share them with our team. And so as part of the segments, we want to start doing Just Ask Dad, and may not be every episode, but we'll put in the show notes how you can submit your Just Ask Dad question, and it might appear on a future episode. And just know Dad's proud of you.
I love that. I will say that I had fun walking with the management team, and we do that a lot. And my management team, so our executives, are talking about how they ask me questions, and they're like, "Yeah, just ask dad, just ask dad." So I'm this dad, which is kind of a funny figure within there. But sure enough, soon as you opened up whatever that app is that we use, I don't know what we use between ourselves. What's that?
Marco
What's it called?
Polo.
You have the button that I push. I know. Marco Polo. So I come out of Silicon Valley and I can't even remember all these damn apps anymore. But so Marco Polo, I hit that, and sure enough, my team is starting on there. Hey, Dad, and started asking me all the times I'm in Spain and traveling around. I'm getting all these new dads, which is a wonderful gift. So thank you. Well, Candace, thank you for joining me. Your little sister, younger sister, was on this Powell perspective. So I got to tell you, I am so fortunate to have you both on, and maybe I can grab your other siblings on at different times. And it's a great thing, but it is a great opportunity. And I love this idea of the Just Ask Dad. And to the team putting this video together, thanks for getting it out. And that's it for the Powell perspective. If you are a founder and you're looking at raising capital, or if you're looking at investing in founders and want to see if it's a relatively good investment idea from just the overview, we don't give investment advice, but we will tell you about how the pitch works. You can just go to founders-office.com and load up any pitch deck, and within 24 hours, we will give you the information on that. It sits there. to be able to give founders that feedback of what they can do to improve their storytelling. So thanks again, Powell Perspective. Have a great day.